Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming and joining us today on Fiveable. I'm going to give it 1 minute until our start time for this presentation today as some students are logging in, but I'm glad that you are here. We're going to be going over AP Multiple Choice Part 2 composition questions today. All right, we got some more coming in. So let's get started here very briefly. Thanks for being here again on this Wednesday. So a lot of you hopefully were able to take part in part 1, which was just this past Saturday. Today we're doing our second and final multiple choice practice for AP Lang this year. And we will be having, during the big CRAM finale, the day before our AP exam, that's going to be May 11th, is our CRAM finale. Some time to go over some multiple choice. We're going to be, Miss Kirk and I are creating some new questions that are only on Fiveable that we're going to be doing for our final practice. Until then, though, we are going to be using the College Board resources that are public and available for us to be practicing. So today we will have a lot of time to practice together. So hopefully the chat feature is working for you, and I do have the polls up and ready to go as well when we get to these questions. So we'll be voting on what answers we want to vote for, A, B, C, or D. And then just like on Saturday, if you were with me, we will have to put E in the chat because the polls on Vimeo, which is where we're streaming, only have 4 answer choices and AP has 5. So we are going to get into that pretty quickly. There's not a whole lot of talking that I'm going to do today before we start practicing. So let's do a little bit of just what to expect in terms of multiple choice composition. Before we do that, just a reminder that we are recording this video. A lot of students watch our videos after they are live. So just remember that if you're active in the chat, I might just shout out your name. But please be active. Please be ready to just share some thoughts and also taking those polls today. Today, the best way to practice and get ready for AP Language multiple choice is to just do some deliberate practice. So we'll talk about that today and we'll practice together. Okay, before we get into talking about just some quick overview tips about composition multiple choice questions, 3 things I want to cover with you, or just looking up into the future. I'm doing one of these, Miss Kirk is doing a couple of them. So we've got a lot of streams coming up. Synthesis on April 20th, 6 Eastern. Rhetorical analysis just a few days later, April 24th at 5 Eastern. And then argument. These are 3 of our last streams that we're doing. We are getting close. So May 1st will be argument. So really we have 1 big stream left for each of these big FRQs, these essays that you'll be writing. With that said, let's get into some multiple choice today. This is our final multiple choice stream of the semester. And then, like I said, we have that big CRAM finale coming up on May 11th. What to expect today is pretty much what I've been talking about. We're going to talk pretty briefly about just, hey, here's what to expect. Here's what these type of questions are. Hopefully this isn't super new to you at this point in the year on April 14th. So what we do want to do is take some time to practice these together. So some of you just joined in. Just a quick reminder for where we are. Be ready to be active in the chat and taking some polls on these questions. The main purpose and goal of this stream is to do some good practicing on this type of multiple choice question. So I have 9 questions for you today that we're going to be working together on. But a quick overview, and because there are a lot of students who were not here on Saturday when I went over part 1, I wanted to make sure we're all up to speed. So for the first hour of AP Language, you will have 45 multiple choice questions. That's important. That's an impactful hour. That hour will culminate in 45% of your exam score. So really, the essays, they are lengthy. It's going to take you more than half of the time for sure to write those essays, but it's only 55% of your score. So this hour is like minute by minute, the most important hour of the exam. If you think about it that way, we've really got to make sure we're hitting the ground running. The moment your proctor says, begin, it's very important that you are at your peak. You're not like waking up partway through this test. You are well awake and raring to go on this multiple choice. You want to hit the ground running as you start. So the first two passages that you'll see are rhetorical analysis passages. Those are, again, you're not writing a rhetorical analysis essay, but it looks similar. It's a nonfiction text, and you'll have 10 to 12 questions about for each of those passages. That was our stream on Saturday this past weekend. So if you did not catch that, if you want to go check out that replay, those slides are up. Today we're going to be talking about the second half of multiple choice. So for what that is, if you look at the second big bullet point, 20 to 22 composition questions. That's what we're talking about today. This will most likely be 3 shorter nonfiction passages. They will not be nearly as long as the reading analytical passages. The composition passages will be shorter and also easier lexile, easier to understand. That's good news. So honestly, you can take a little bit more than half of the time on the first half because those are just tougher questions and longer and harder passages. And then you can go pretty quickly through the composition questions, and that's what we're going to practice today. Again, they're shorter nonfiction passages. Just catch that there's most likely going to be 3 of them. They will not be equal length. So my advice is always, especially if you're taking this pencil paper, kind of old school way where you have this big old packet in front of you in a classroom somewhere, flip through, see what you're dealing with, just so you're like mentally prepared. There's no surprises as you flip through. Again, they're not necessarily of equal length, but they'll be shorter than the rhetorical analysis passages. So let's talk about what exactly we need to do for these questions. By the way, I mentioned this on Saturday as we were looking forward to today's stream. This is the first year that these questions will be provided on our exam. They had them prepared for last year, but then because of COVID, they condensed, as you know, all of the AP exams. We did not do multiple choice in 2020. We're bringing it back 2021 for AP Lang. So the task is read and revise nonfiction texts. So you're only dealing with nonfiction texts in AP language, as you probably already know, hopefully. But here, you are going to see flawed passages. They're not going to be like terrible passages, but there's going to be ways to improve them. If you're familiar with the SAT, which is another College Board exam, it's similar to the SAT writing and language. And I know actually today or yesterday was a big nationwide SAT date. So maybe a lot of you have taken it this week. So if you think to part 2 of the SAT, which is writing and language, that's going to be similar to what we're dealing with here. Now, the difference is these are going to be higher level questions. We're not going to be wasting any questions by, should this be a comma or a semicolon or a period? Or, these tiny little grammatical things. What we're going to be doing instead is looking at the overall line of reasoning, the flow of the author's text. So you will have some questions on what's the best transition word to use here? Or should this sentence be added and why? Those are the types of questions that we're dealing with these college level composition questions. Again, you've got about half of the multiple choice in rhetorical analysis and then about half of them in composition. But I recommend spending a little bit less than half of the time here in these composition questions just because they are more accessible and shorter and easier to read passages. So that's going to give you, just about a minute per question. Here's how I recommend approaching these. So the first thing you want to do is don't even look at the questions, just like I recommend with the rhetorical analysis passages. Don't even worry about the questions. Just do a quick read to understand the topic of this passage, of this quick nonfiction text. Now, that's really important with what we talked about on Saturday, rhetorical analysis questions. For these, it's also important because you just want to ground yourself And okay, this is what the text is about. And then you're going to put your revision caps on as you're getting through the questions. So as you answer each question, they're often going to point you back to a specific sentence. So you're going to reread the context surrounding it. Now, and then you're going to answer the questions. Now, I don't recommend stressing at all about annotating during these composition questions. If you know me, if you saw my presentation from Saturday, I'm a big believer in annotations for the other type of questions, the rhetorical analysis type of questions. But because these passages are so short, because most of the questions are going to direct you right back to a specific sentence, and because these passages are easier to understand, annotations aren't usually necessary. Now, if you've been practicing and are like, nope, I still want to annotate, absolutely do what works best for you. But it is important that we completely differentiate in our minds the task. So the first task for the first two passages, again, read and break down what is effective about this argument. And there's going to be some just comprehension questions for the first two passages. Now, the next three, the composition ones, it's just revising someone else's argument. So you're focusing on just the flow of the argument. And you're actually like putting your revising, editing caps on as you're answering these questions. So they're never going to ask you a comprehension question. Now, you will still have to comprehend the passage as a whole to answer these questions well. And we'll see that today as we practice. Okay, if there are questions, please ask me in the chat. We do have Brandon here for a bit, and then he's going to tag out. Another TA is going to be helping us out the second half of this stream. Please do let us know if you have questions. That is absolutely what we're here for live. I also have the chat window open so I can see if there's any questions. But let's get into our practice. We're going to spend the rest of the stream, I should say, doing some practice. So again, I'm going to be releasing polls, and then we will have some time to be slow to break down a lot of these questions. So we're going to leave today, hopefully, with confidence that we know what types of questions to expect and we know how to navigate around them. So I'm glad you're here live so we can work on this together. So again, this is a passage taken from the College Board course and exam description. It's possible you've seen these. We don't have access to, we're not able to share a lot of the resources on AP Classroom because they want that to be for teachers only to assign to their students. They want to keep those secure. So we can work on these today. And then again, on May 11th, we will have some 5-able only multiple choice questions that we're going to be practicing on. So let's get into it. First, we're going to read the passage. I'll show you a quick preview. It is just 11 sentences long. Then we got our first question. So it's 4 very short paragraphs. This is going to be a much easier, quicker read than if you were with me on Saturday for that longer text, for that multiple choice stream on part 1. So here's all I would do. I will read it with me. It might be a little hard to see, so you might just need to expand your screen however you need to do that to set yourself up so you can actually read this. Just because we got captions going on the bottom, it kind of makes the screen small. So we do want to keep those captions going, but we do want to make sure you can see it. So take a second to make sure the best you can see the screen. I've got it as big as I have on my end. All right, so sentence 1. After an unsuccessful search, NASA determined that instead of following a trajectory that would allow the orbiter to enter orbit around Mars, it came too close to the planet, causing it to enter and disintegrate in Mars's atmosphere. The culprit was a discrepancy in the software that controlled the spacecraft's thrusters. One team of engineers had calculated the force needed from the thrusters in pounds and an imperial unit, while another team calculated the force in newtons, a metric unit. So every paragraph, I'm just thinking to myself, I'm not annotating, I'm not taking any time to do that. I'm tracking the flow of the text though. So far we're talking about a NASA research or search mission that was unsuccessful. And then we're talking about there were 2 different units, imperial and metric. So let's figure out, okay, what's the connection here? So sentence 3 is our paragraph 2. The orbiter mission failure is just one reason, albeit an extremely expensive one, that the United States needs to abandon future Mars survey missions. Most of the world uses the metric system, a decimal measurement system that allows for simple scaling and calculations by adding the relevant prefixes. 1 kilometer, for example, is 1,000 meters, and 1 kilogram is 1,000 grams. The imperial measurement system used in the United States assigns values haphazardly. 1 mile is 5,280 feet long, while 1 pound is 16 ounces. This is probably all not new information to you all. This is just metric versus our system of measurement in miles and pounds. So they're just saying, hey, this is what the author is clearly saying. We think that the United States should adopt the metric system. It's just a lot simpler. All right, we're halfway done with this text already. Let's read paragraph 3. The United States is one of only 3 countries. The others are Liberia and Myanmar that have not fully adopted the metric system. Not only are conversion errors such as the Orbiter 1 costly, they can be deadly. Wrong dosing of medicine due to unit confusion, teaspoons versus milliliters, results in trips to the emergency room each year. Switching to the metric system would also benefit United States industries. The European Union, for example, has been requiring its member states to standardize their metric system since 1971. Converting to metric, last paragraph, converting to metric may seem difficult, but the United States already uses it more than you might think. From races, that 5K you're running, to soft drinks, that 2-liter bottle you bought, to high school science classes, those 250 milliliter beakers you used in chemistry. It's time for the United States to make the leap to metric in everything else it measures. So clearly this guy or gal, whoever's writing this, is very clearly on board with the metric system and saying the US should adopt it. Okay, so that would take me maybe 3 quick minutes to read, and then that means I got to do less than a minute per question if you factor in this reading time as we go. So again, we've got 9 questions tonight. Today is not about speed. I do want to talk about some timed practice at the end of our stream today about, hey, what are some next steps between now and your exam day? And again, I know this is a weird year. We have 3 different exam days for AP Language. So some of you have less than a month. Some of you have a little bit more than a month. Wherever you are, whenever you're taking this exam, I do want to give you some tips on how to practice after today. We'll do that at the very end of the stream. Again, if there's questions, that's what Brandon and I are here for right now. So let's go into our first question. Again, you might, just however you need to set up your screen today so you can see it. I know the screen's a little bit smaller because those captions are on, but I do want to make sure you can see it, and then we're going to be talking through this and using the poll to vote on what we think. Again, the best way to practice is some deliberate practice, so let's do that together today. If you believe the answer is E, you're just going to put that in the chat because the polls only gave me 4 answer choices. So for that, we'll use A, B, C, and D. So let's look at the question. And remember our format. We're going to read the question. We're going to go back and look at the context. And then we're going to choose our best answer. So I'll kind of lead the way on this first one. We'll be doing some toggling back and forth between the answer choices and the first sentence. So the question says, which of the following sentences, if placed before sentence 1, would both capture the audience's interest and provide the most effective introduction to the topic of the paragraph? So the way that we should do this is a quick guess and check. And by that, I mean, we're going to just go see the flow. So again, we're looking at if this was placed before sentence 1. So what I'm going to do is read A, and then let's look at sentence 1, how it flows together. And we'll do that for all 5 answer choices. Obviously, it will take me longer reading them out loud than it would for you under a time setting to quickly go back and forth. So stick with it as we look at A, and then sentence 1, B, and then sentence 1, and then you're all going to vote on which one flows best. Again, you got to answer the specific question. So it's not which one do you like, it's which one does this. Capture the audience's interest and provide the most effective introduction to the topic of the paragraph. Again, we're talking about the topic of the paragraph, not necessarily the topic of the overall passage. So that's important to focus on. So let's read. A, NASA's Mars Climate Orbiter was launched on December 11th, 1998, from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. And then I've got the first sentence let's look at. After an unsuccessful search, NASA determined that instead of following a trajectory that would allow the orbiter to enter orbit around Mars, it came too close to the planet, causing it to enter and disintegrate in Mars's atmosphere. Okay, that's A. So let's look at B. On September 23rd, 1999, NASA officials were aghast when the $125 million Mars Climate Orbiter vanished as it prepared to enter the red planet's orbit. After an unsuccessful search, NASA determined that instead of following a trajectory that would allow the orbiter to enter orbit around Mars. And I'll just cut it off there. So let's look at C. We want to see which one of this captures the audience's attention and introduces the topic of the paragraph. C says, as part of a new set of missions intended to survey the planet Mars, the Mars Climate Orbiter vanished as it prepared to enter. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Let me just start over because I looked at B for a second. As part of the new set of missions intended to survey the planet Mars, the Mars Climate Orbiter was launched by NASA scientists to study Mars's climate and weather. I'll do this quicker now. After an unsuccessful search, NASA determined that instead, blah, blah, blah. We've got that one now, hopefully. D, when NASA officials lost contact with their Mars Climate Orbiter on September 23rd, 1999, they immediately instigated a search for the spacecraft using NASA's Deep Space Network of radio antenna. After an unsuccessful search, NASA determined that blah, blah, blah. Okay, we have one more to look at. We're just looking at how it flows into the paragraph and answering the question. Audience's interest, effective intro of the topic. So the last one is E, and then I'm going to set up the poll. The Mars Climate Orbiter carried two instruments when it attempted and failed to enter Mars's orbit in September 1999. The Mars Climate Orbiter color imager and the pressure modulated infrared radio meter. After an unsuccessful search, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's go ahead. I'm going to release the poll. Look at your answer choices. Again, we only got 9 we're doing today, so I'm taking our time with this. We're not going to rush through these questions. I'll give you 1 minute. We'll see how quickly we get these in, but take your time. We're going to release number 1 now. Put E in the chat if you think it's E. If not, vote A, B, C, or D. Try to have your votes in if you want to vote on time in 30 seconds, and then I'm going to close the poll. Got some votes in already. Okay, 10 seconds. Get those votes in if you want to be a part of this voting on the poll. All right, closing it out. Everybody who voted for B. B is right. Something that I like to focus on here, and I'm going to take these results away so you can see. Something I like to focus on is make sure for these composition questions that you go in and make sure it answers both parts of the question. So for this one, we took our time, we went back and forth, and that's what I want you to do. Obviously, we'll go at a quicker pace than we will full group today. But then again, make sure it doesn't just answer or catch the audience's interest, but it also effectively introduces the topic. So yeah, we saw that here with B, and then we saw that it flowed perfectly into the actual paragraph itself. So nice job, everybody. So we're going to do number 2 now. We've got 8 left before we are done with this practice round. So off to a good start. Someone asked, I was able to zoom in a tiny bit on the screen. So hopefully that'll help a little bit. Let's go to the next one. Answer is B, like you all said. So the next one. And again, to fit all of these multiple choice on a slide, it is, again, you might have to zoom in a little bit more on your end, however that needs to work. I know it's sometimes weird working on like different tech, different browsers, that kind of thing. But I want to be able to see all answer choices as I'm just voting on process of elimination. So let's look, or like thinking through process of elimination. So let's look at number 2. In sentence 2, which is kind of nice, they reproduced it below. The writer wants an effective transition from the introductory paragraph to the main idea of the passage. Okay, so you're going to see a lot of questions like this where they have a little bit of the sentence underlined. That's the part that we're looking at potentially replacing. Or oftentimes choice A will be as it is now, which means we're not changing it. With that said, let's just read it as it is, and then I'm going to go through B, C, D, and E. Before I do that, let's just think about this. An effective transition from the introductory paragraph, which is talking about the Mars search, to the main idea of the passage, which is talking about shifting to the metric unit. So, I would just look back really quickly. Okay, this is the end of paragraph 1, and then he or she does get into the metric system pretty quickly. So again, which one of those transitions to the main idea about the metric system? Let's look. The culprit was a discrepancy in the software that controlled the spacecraft's thrusters. One team of engineers had calculated the force needed from the thrusters in pounds, an imperial unit, while another team calculated the force in newtons, a metric unit. Which of the following versions of the underlined text best achieves the goal? So should it be as I just read? And I'm just going to read the underlined texts. So after thrusters, again, you should be thinking which one of these best connects to the overall main idea, which is about the US adapting to the metric system. So B, the data from the spacecraft and the data from NASA's computers on the ground had not been matching up for months since the launch of the orbiter. C, thrusters to different engineering teams, one from Lockheed Martin Astronautics, and another from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, had worked on creating different parts of the software. Got 2 more to look at. D. And again, I mentioned process of elimination. You should absolutely be using that. If you know it's not B, like ignore B and never look at it again, right, in your mind. And if you're taking the pencil paper exam, you will absolutely cross it out in your booklet. Okay, let's look at D. Thrusters, software that was used to calculate the trajectory the orbiter needed to take in order to enter Mars's orbit successfully. Or is it E? Thrusters, 4 thrusters were used for trajectory correction maneuvers, as well as pitch and yaw control, while another 4 were used for roll control. Okay, let's open up the poll. You have 1 minute to get your votes in. Again, if you think it's E, just type that into the chat. Otherwise, vote A, B, C, or D. Poll is open. Again, you should be thinking which one of these connects to the metric system the clearest. If you're thinking about that, you got this. I already got a few votes in. Let's do about 20 more seconds. I know some of you are still looking through it. Okay, 10 seconds, and we're going to close the poll. All right, here we go. Most of us did get this one right. Here's the results. So 83% said A. A is correct. A couple of us said B. Let's just look at B and why it's wrong really quickly. B says the data from spacecraft and the data from NASA's computers on the ground had not been matching up. Close, right? But the reason that we're talking here is about the metric system. So we want to focus on what A already focused on, an imperial unit versus a metric unit. So yeah, that one best sets us up for the main idea of the entire passage. Okay, I'm going to get those results out of here. Good job so far. We got 7 questions left. Let's keep it up. Like I said, 2 was A, like you all voted. Number 3. In sentence 3, again, they reproduced it below. Which of the following versions of the underlined text best establishes the writer's position on the main argument of the passage? So let's read sentence 3, and then let's just make sure we see where it is in context. The orbiter mission failure is just one reason, albeit an extremely expensive one, that the United States needs to abandon future Mars survey missions. Okay, let's see. Again, we got to answer the specific question. All of these are likely to be grammatically correct. It's which one answers the question. So develops or establishes the writer's position on the main argument of the passage. I'm going to read the last line with B, C, D, and E so you can see the flow of them, and then we'll vote. That the United States needs to abandon future Mars survey missions. B, that the United States should consider privatizing space exploration. C, that the United States needs to adopt the metric system. D, that the United States should partner with other countries on future missions to outer space. Or E, that the United States must stress STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, education starting at an early age. Again, if we understand the main passage, if we do take our time to read it for 2 or 3 minutes and just get a good grounding of this is what this topic is about, some of these questions are going to fall in line pretty quickly. We can answer them in like 20 seconds. Let's see how we do today on number 3. I'm going to open up the poll. Again, focusing on the actual question, establishes the writer's position on the main argument of the passage. Go ahead and vote when you got your answer. I'll still give you 1 solid minute to vote, even though a lot of you can probably do it a little bit quicker. Just making sure everyone has enough time to go through and really make sure you're confident as you're voting. Again, if you think it's E, you're going to type that in the chat. Otherwise, vote A, B, C, or D in that poll. And we do have a swap of TAs, so thank you for being here. And we still got some help in the chat if there are any questions. And our TA is still hosting like a debrief or a Q&A or whatever you want to call it afterwards. So if you have any questions, you want to talk about APA language more tonight, after this session's up, we're still going to be around. Our TA is going to be helping us out. So thank you. Let's do 10 seconds more. I got a lot of votes. We're feeling pretty good about this one. All right. Great work, everybody. 100% of us got it right. So if you voted, you got it right. C is correct. That was easy, right? As long as we take our time, even though it's quick, take 2 or 3 minutes to read through that text, make sure you understand it. Don't start reading the questions unless you can tell me or like your teacher or your friend, whatever. Obviously, you're not going to talk during the test, but if you could, you would tell them this text, this passage is about blank. So here you would say, this passage is about the US needing to adopt the metric system. Once you do that, these questions can go super quick. Now, they're not all going to be as easy as number 2 and 3. These are, I mean, they're kind of a hybrid. Like I said at the beginning of our session today, there's no comprehension questions in composition, but you can't answer these questions without comprehending it, right? So this is not just about comprehension. It's about the flow of the text. Again, you want to establish a line of reasoning. That is what the composition practice questions are all about. But you do have to understand what the text is so you can develop that line of reasoning. So comprehension obviously still matters. It's just not nearly as hard as it is for those first 2 rhetorical analysis type passages. So let's keep up the good work. We're moving on to number 3. So we have 6 questions left. Number 3, as we all voted, was C. Let's look at 4. All right, so this one's a different type of question. This is one where we've got to think about adding a phrase. So let's look at it. The writer wants to add a phrase at the beginning of sentence 5. Okay. Adjusting the capitalization as needed to set up a comparison with the idea discussed in sentence 4. Let me tell you how I would answer this question. Don't even look at sentence 5 until you look at sentence 4. So let's go do that. Sentence 4, I'm going to read, and then we'll see what the relationship is between these two. Okay, so sentence 4 says, most of the world uses the metric system, a decimal measurement system that allows for simple scaling and calculations by adding the relevant prefixes. 1 kilometer, for example, is 1,000 meters, and 1 kilogram is 1,000 grams. Okay, so you probably remember when we first read it, that's the sentence where they just talk about what exactly is the metric system. Now let's read sentence 5, and then let's figure out what's the relationship between those 2 sentences. The imperial measurement system used in the United States assigns values haphazardly. 1 mile is 5,280 feet long, while 1 pound is 16 ounces. Which of the following choices best accomplishes this goal? So before you even look at A, B, C, D, and E, I want you to think to yourself, and if I told you, you'd automatically get this question. So I'm going to put the thinking on you. This is not hard. Don't overthink it. What's the relationship between sentence 4 and 5? And then we're going to match, okay, which transition best shows that relationship? Furthermore, for example, similarly, by contrast, or in fact. I'm going to open up the poll. You have 1 minute to vote. All right, poll is open. Again, if you ever think it's E, you're putting that in the chat. And the best way to do today in any multiple choice practice is not to watch other people study, but to practice yourself. So make sure if you want to get the best practice in the day, use that poll, really be thinking through what is the answer. Put yourself out there a little bit. It's all good. If you get it wrong, no pressure, no stress. All right, we're going to do about 20 more seconds because I already got a bunch of votes in. But 20 more seconds in case you're still looking. All right, everybody. Let's see how we did. Awesome job. The answer here was D, by contrast. So if you were in my actual classroom, I would say, hey, what's the relationship between sentence 4 and sentence 5? And you would say something like, they're opposites. So by contrast shows that they're opposites. Nice job. So this is how I want us to think about it. Look at the context. Before you even look at A, B, C, D, and E, here's what I always recommend. Have the answer in your head. know what you would say if this was a short answer question, because you're probably going to get it right in your own words. And then you just want to go through A, B, C, D, or E. Which one best matches my answer? That's the best way to do this. It's actually going to save you time. All right, let's go to number 5. Or was D, as we all voted? Okay, 5. A little bit longer here. This is sentence 9, so we're bumping way down from 5 to 9. In sentence 9, reproduced below, the writer wants to provide a convincing explanation for why switching to the metric system would benefit United States industries. Switching to the metric system would also benefit United States blank. Okay, everybody, I'm going to read A, B, C, D, or E. I'm just going to read them all. And as I'm reading, I want you thinking which one is most accurate to the question. So again, all of these are grammatically correct. What we got to see is which one does the best job of explaining why switching to the metric system would benefit U.S. industries. That's a really specific thing we're looking for, benefiting U.S. industries. This is how I would actually have you do it. Read through them, and you're using process of elimination. Could it be A? Maybe. If not, cross it out in your mind, and let's find the one that talks about benefiting U.S. industries, the metric system. All right, so I'll just read what's in underline. Industries is A. Industries. The European Union, for example, has been requiring its member states to standardize their metric systems since 1971. Okay, does that show how U.S. industries are benefited? Let's look at B. Industries. Since most of the world already uses the metric system, it is likely to be the only measuring system in the future. Okay, what do you think? Does that seem like it's benefiting U.S. industries? C. Industries. In fact, the Omnibus Trade and Competitive Act of 1988, passed by Congress and signed into law by President Ronald Reagan, encouraged United States industries to adopt the metric system. All right, keep thinking about it. Let's go to D. Industries. Those with products in both domestic and international markets would no longer need to design in and produce two different measurement systems, reducing both product overlap and manufacturing inefficiencies. Keep thinking, does that show how the metric system would benefit U.S. industries? And last one to think about. Industries. The United States Metric Board was established in 1975 as part of the Metric Conversion Act to encourage the adoption of the metric system in the United States, something it continued to do until it was abolished in 1982. All right, so you should have an answer in mind. You might need to go back and use some process of elimination. Which one of these best answers the actual question? Which one shows the benefit of the metric system to U.S. industries? Open poll now. Go ahead and vote once you've got your answer. And just a reminder, if you ever think it's E, we haven't had any E's yet, but that's what the chat's for. All right, we'll do 30 more seconds. And 10 more seconds to get your votes heard. Okay, closing the poll. We did pretty good on this one. Okay, so we had a couple votes for C. Most of us agreed that it was D. Let's just look at both. Since we're live, I want to make sure we're really feeling confident with these. So C, it is D, by the way, but let's look at C first. In fact, the Omnibus Trade and Competitiveness Act of 1988 passed by Congress and signed into law by President Ronald Reagan, encouraged United States industries to adopt the metric system. I'd say that's definitely the second best answer. So if you voted for that, you were close. But let's look at why D is better. C is close. The reason why C isn't perfect is because it encouraged United States industries to adopt, but it didn't actually say like what it would do for those industries. D actually says, okay, here's the actual benefit. Those with products in both domestic and international markets would no longer need to design in and produce two different measurement systems, reducing both, here's the actual benefit, product overlap and manufacturing inefficiencies. So that's the actual benefit. C is certainly close. D is even more practical for the word benefit. Okay, good work, everybody. I'm going to take that poll away, and we're going to go on to number 6. 5 was the... Okay, we're over halfway done. We have 4 questions left. Good work today. So let's look at 6. The writer wants to add the following sentence to the third paragraph, sentences 6 through 9. So obviously, we'll go look at that paragraph to provide additional explanation. Let's look at the sentence. These are the most time-consuming, and I often think the hardest type of questions. It's a little bit tricky to do this without like having both in front of you, but I didn't want to like put all kinds of words so much on the slide that you couldn't see it. So I'm going to be doing some toggling back and forth, and let's just talk about how we would tackle this type of a question. You'll definitely see 2 or 3 questions like this is my prediction. Probably not like a ton of questions, but definitely a couple of them. So my guess would be 2, 3, maybe even 4 questions in this vein. If you're having trouble with time, these are the perfect questions to skip and save for the end, just because you don't want to take 3 minutes here and then have to guess on 3 questions. I'd rather have you only guess on this type of question. Again, for composition questions, we find that a lot of students are not struggling with time, but obviously, if you're spending a lot of time on those first 2 passages, which are the analytical ones, you might want to just save these and guess on them. I don't want you to stress out about these. Every question's created equal. So spend the time on the ones that you can get to. Obviously, we want to make sure if you do have time, which a lot of you will, that you know how to do these. So let's talk about it. This means, this is the sentence we're thinking about adding, or that we want to add, we just don't know where. This means that the United States must convert to metric units whenever it is dealing with the rest of the world. All right, where would this sentence be placed best? So let's just look at the flow. Let's first go back to paragraph 3. That's sentences 6 through 9. So the first one, sentence 6, this is talking about the US being only one of 3 countries who still use the metric system. And then here we get to, let's just kind of look at how this paragraph flows. Switching to the metric system would also benefit the US industries. That's the one that we were just editing. So let's figure out where this sentence would best flow. I'll read the sentence and then the sentence that would come after it. So this is absolutely a logical line of reasoning type of question. Okay, so this means that the United States must convert to metric units whenever it is dealing with the rest of the world. The United States is one of only 3 countries. The others are Liberia and Myanmar that have not fully adopted the metric system. Okay, that's choice A. Choice B is after that sentence. So with that sentence in mind, that have not fully adopted the metric system, this means that the United States must convert to metric units whenever it is dealing with the rest of the world. Not only are conversion errors such as the orbiter one costly, they can be deadly, okay? That's the next sentence. So with that one in mind, they can be deadly. This means that the United States must convert to metric units whenever it is dealing with the rest of the world. Wrong dosing of medicine due to unit confusion results in trips to the emergency room each year. Okay, that's sentence 8. So you're just kind of like plugging it in between each sentence. Where does it best fit? So sentence 8, emergency room each year. This means the United States must convert to metric units whenever it is dealing with the rest of the world. And then you got the next one. Switching to the metric system would also benefit the U.S. industries. Or would it be after that sentence? Switching to the metric system would also benefit U.S. industries. and then you would read, this means that the United States must convert. Okay, which one of these? This one's kind of tough, so I'm actually going to give you a few seconds. I'm going to toggle back and forth before I open up the poll, just to kind of secure. So again, our options are before sentence 6, after sentence 6, after sentence 7, after sentence 8, after sentence 9, pretty much like anywhere. Out of those 5 choices, where does that sentence fit most? I'm going to toggle back and forth one more time so you can kind of figure this out. Hopefully this one seems doable, even though it kind of is time consuming. Okay, I'm going to go back, and now you can vote for your answer. I'll have the chat open if you want to tell me, hey, go back real quick for me. I will do that. We'll take 1 minute though. If I don't see anyone in the chat asking to go back, then I won't, but I will if you want me to. Okay, number 6 is open. I've got a few votes already. Again, take your time to make sure you're confident with your answer choice. And then if I see anyone in the chat asking me to go back, I certainly will. I see someone's asking for the poll. The poll's open on my end. Thanks, Tom. Thank you, thank you. Absolutely. So let's go back. Got a couple people voting still. I know it's kind of hard to do this question with so much going back and forth. Sweet. Okay, I'm going to do 10 more seconds. I know this one's a little bit longer just because we had to do a little toggling. Okay, let's check them out. If you're with me in voting, you're doing really well. So most of us got B. B is correct. Let me tell you why it's not D. We did get a couple votes for D. Let me just get back here. Actually, you know what? Let me get rid of this poll so you can see better. Okay. So the best answer is B, after sentence 6. Just think of how this flows off of this one. The United States is only one of 3 countries that have not fully developed it. Oops, I went the wrong way. This means that the US must convert. Yeah, that makes sense, right? When dealing with the rest of the world. So that one's just clearly the best, just because it flows so well into off of sentence 6. Let's just talk about why it's not D, after sentence 8. It kind of like changes the topic back. So it says wrong dosing of medicine due to unit confusion results in trips to the emergency room each year. This means would be talking about wrong dosing or emergency use, not this means about conversion. So we have to think about like, okay, what does this means referring back to? It can't be before sentence 6 because we don't know what it's referring back to. Okay, let's go. We got 3 more to do, and we're going to do them a little bit quicker now so we can actually get to all 3. So 7. And again, I'm going to pick up the pace, so no stress if you're like, oh man, I don't know, I need a little bit more time, just so we can get to all 3. That's kind of my thinking here. But this one actually is going to take us just a minute. So number 7, the writer wants to add more information to the 3rd paragraph to support the main argument. We're really masters of that paragraph now. I just read every sentence like twice. So all of the following pieces of evidence help achieve this purpose except. So again, we want to look at the main argument of the paragraph. And I'm not going to tell you what that one was to make sure, like, okay, we're thinking about this, but for A, B, C, D, and E, which one of these would add effective support to that paragraph that we were just reading so long? And then you're only going to have one of them that doesn't really work. So I'm just going to read them and then open up the poll. A, an airplane that ran out of fuel mid-flight because of a conversion error by the pilots when they calculated how much fuel they needed. B, a mechanical failure of an amusement park ride that occurred because the imperial size of a particular part was ordered instead of the metric size. C, a quote from Thomas Jefferson's 18th century proposal for a new decimal system to standardize weights and measures. D, data from a US company demonstrating an increase in profits because of its conversion to the metric system. And E, a map showing the countries that use the metric system shaded in one color and those that use the imperial system shaded in another color. You know what? We should just take a second before I open up the poll. Remember, just refresh real quick. I'm just going to leave this here. This is what the paragraph's about. Now let's go back. Which one of these does not belong in this paragraph? They're all on topic, but which one's like just tangentially related as opposed to absolutely related? Okay, 7 is open. Again, if you want to vote E, just put that in the chat. Okay, we got some votes coming in. Thanks for your hard work today. This is the best way to practice multiple choice. We'll go quick. We'll do about 15 more seconds. And 5 seconds, I'm going to close the poll. Okay, let's see how we did, everybody. Great job, we got it. So yeah, Thomas Jefferson, he's talking about the metric system, but that one's not showing like the flaws of this not using the metric system today. A, B, D, and E are all showing, okay, the US is kind of alone and has some problems because it's not using the metric system. Okay, we got 2 more to do. Let's do them super quick. In the 4th paragraph, the writer wants to expand on the concession. Concession is just an AP language word you should know. To concede means to acknowledge something's true about the other side of the argument. Something is true about the other side of the argument. So to expand on the concession that converting to the metric system may seem difficult. Which of the following claims would best achieve this purpose? Let's go through it quickly. The imperial system in the US uses today functions perfectly well, so there's no need to change it. B, many attempts to make the US adopt the metric system have already been made. C, the units in the imperial system were first officially defined by the Office of the Executor in Great Britain in 1824, but they have existed as the Winchester Standard since 1588. D, some people in Great Britain, which adopted the metric system decades ago, want to return to the imperial system. Or E, it would be extremely costly as well as confusing for the US to manage the overwhelming task of converting everything from road signs to measuring cups to the metric system. I'm going to tell you this one just for time. So we have to be looking for a concession. So like, what is a problem with converting? What's a drawback? So the best answer here is E, it would be extremely costly and confusing. That is an expanded drawback. All right, so now we're going to do one more. And I am going to open up that poll. Same one in the 4th paragraph. The writer wants to provide further evidence to rebut the claim that converting to the metric system might be difficult. Which of the following pieces of evidence would best achieve this purpose? So again, which one of these would he be able to use to have a rebuttal against this claim that it would be difficult? So it's kind of like, okay, point, counterpoint. How would he refute or rebut this claim that it's difficult? We're almost done, but let's end with one more. A 2012 petition signed by over 25,000 people urging the White House to adopt the metric system. B, an interview from an opponent of adopting the metric system in the US. C, A personal anecdote about a failed attempt to make a cake because of a measurement conversion error. D. A description of the successful adoption of the metric system by Great Britain, which had previously used the imperial system. Or E. A US government report eliminating the cost of converting highway signs on state roads at $334 million. Okay, last thing we're doing. Let's get that last poll up. This is for number 9. Again, as you're looking at it, you may vote E in the chat, but you just want to be looking A, B, C, D, or E. Which one of these could this author say to tell other people, we should still do this? I know you say it's going to be difficult, but let me tell you why we should still do it. Okay, we are pretty much in unanimous agreement. I know the chat, I see some E's, but I think that was for the last question, if my time captions are right. So I think we're all in agreement that this is D. Hey, Britain did it. We can too, pretty much. Okay, great work today. I do want to say one more thing. If you need to log off, obviously go for it. My last thing that I wanted to bring up today is how to study between now and your exam. So the best way to do that is to get on AP Classroom if you have a teacher. If you don't have an AP teacher, if you're taking this independently, buy a practice booklet, Princeton Review, Barron's, whatever, just because they do have some practice problems. You do want to get some timed practice in. So, we didn't practice timing today. We did really well with building our skill and like really figuring out these questions. Just get some time practice in. You want to do a full length at least once. So that's 45 questions in 1 hour. There's a ton of resources that you need your teacher to give you on AP Classroom, or you can go above and beyond and buy a Barron's or a Princeton Review, that kind of book. And they do have some practice full lengths in there. Miss Kirk and I will be doing some streams between now and May 11th. And then May 11th, we will come back to do some more multiple choice practice one last time before a lot of you wake up the next day to take this exam. All right, I'm going to sign out. I'm going to close out the stream. We do have some TA discussions happening afterwards. If you want to debrief this, if you want to talk about anything else, AP language. Have a good rest of the night, everybody. Thanks for your hard work today, and I will see you next time. Thank you, everybody.